Educational philosophies guide our science of instruction and influence the standards and curriculum that are present in today's schools. This video provides you with background history on the evolution of curriculum and instructional design in our schools. Before we go any further, I'd like you to pause the video and write down your own definition of curriculum. Now I'd like to share a few common definitions of curriculum. Can you find terms on the list that were present in your definition? Often when people think of curriculum, they think of three main terms: intended curriculum, taught curriculum, and learned curriculum. The intended curriculum is what we intend, or at least hope for students to learn, our objectives. The taught curriculum is what we are actually teaching to our students, and the learned curriculum is what the students actually learned. Notice this is a cyclical process. When we assess what is learned, we often go back to the intended curriculum to see if we have achieved our goals. Our examination of curriculum begins with the root word. The most common definition of curriculum comes from the Latin root currere, C-U-R-R-E-R-E, which means to run around, like race course. For many students, the school curriculum is a race to be run, a series of obstacles or hurdles to be passed. Schools in Western civilization are heavily influenced by early Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They all had a goal of creating virtuous and morally good person through education. Socrates was a philosopher in the 4th century. He was known for the founding of the study of ethics and for his method of inquiry known as the Socratic method. The Socratic method is a style of inquiry in which a series of questions is asked to elicit answers, but also to encourage further insight into the inquiry process. Plato was a student of Socrates and was a mathematician and philosopher. He was the founder of the Academy of Athens, the first institution of higher education. In Plato's The Republic, the first comprehensive curriculum was outlined. It included morality, aesthetics, logic, science, politics, and metaphysics. Now, Aristotle was a student of Plato and was also a teacher of Alexander the Great. Aristotle believed that play, physical training, music, debate, and the study of science and philosophy had their place in the forming of body, mind, and soul. Education continued to be influenced by Greek philosophers through medieval times, even as schooling was centered around church schools and monasteries. Grammar, rhetoric, logic, Latin, astronomy, philosophy, and mathematics formed the core of most curriculums. In America, in 1647, I should say in the American colonies in 1647, the old Deluder Satan Law was enacted by Massachusetts General Court. It required towns to build schools in order to make certain that students could read and understand the principles of religion, as well as the laws of the Commonwealth. This law was one of the first efforts to establish a curriculum for schools in early America. In the 18th century in the United States, the primary concern of immigrants was basic literacy, the ability to read and write, and moral development. Colleges had curriculum, but those were primarily in place to prepare clergy. Harvard University, the oldest institution of higher education in the United States, had a curriculum consisting of logic, physics, rhetoric, history, ethics, politics, geometry, astronomy, and literacy studies. Benjamin Franklin proposed the Philadelphia Academy in 1749, which became a prototype for other academies and the American high school. Franklin challenged prevailing beliefs about education and the curriculum by suggesting that the school should teach English rather than Latin, and the curriculum also included scientific and practical skills. In the 19th century, the Common School movement grew out of a wish to provide public-supported, non-sectarian, elementary and secondary education for children of immigrants to advance the moral, social, and economic interests of the nation. In 1893, a Committee of 10 was established to form a standard curriculum. It was headed by Charles Eliot of Harvard, and they recommended 8 years of elementary education and 4 years of secondary education. They recommended that the curriculum taught not depart very far from what the local communities and general public expected. The committee justified the institutionalization of curriculum with the following points: that knowledge taught will enable learners to contribute to the quality of life in the community, that what is taught is unlikely to be acquired anywhere else, that curriculum will simplify and manipulate events in a way to reveal patterns, that curriculum can present ideals for conduct and culture. The classroom will be a safe environment for examining ideas without real-world responsibility for the consequence of enactments. The planned sequence of instruction will have a cumulative effect on learning. Disciplines taught are organized for effective learning, connecting facts, concepts, values, and methods to help understand a subject. and a common body of knowledge can be taught that will serve the nation's need for allegiance to principles of democracy. Around 1918 saw the beginning of progressivism and the influence of John Dewey's philosophy on educational practice. This philosophy moved from prescriptive curriculum that had previously been in place to describing outcomes for curriculum that would take into account individual student differences, goals, attitudes, and abilities. Columbia University was founded as part of the progressive movement, and scholars there searched for the ultimate way to plan for curriculum instruction. They rejected authoritarian teaching methods. Dewey's educational theories were permeated by his primary ethical value of democracy. Dewey and the progressive movement regarded education in a democracy as a tool to enable the citizen to integrate his or her culture and vocation usefully. To accomplish these aims, Dewey said radical reform was needed of both pedagogical methods and curricula. Textbooks have a significant influence on today's schools, with organizational features such as sequencing. Many feel that textbooks encourage the learner's dependency on the teacher for uniform course content, standardized courses of study, and learning sequences. The middle part of the 20th century saw a radical change in American schools. In the 1920s, curriculum was a series of experiences provided by the teacher. It may have included engaging students in meaningful problem-solving situations. It also varied across the country. For example, in California, the study of missions was important. Yet in Iowa, they taught about bushels, pecks, and rods. According to many, as the century progressed, textbooks became the curriculum. Although some progressive teachers created units of instruction that took into account the concerns and interests of their learners, for many others, what they learned was what was in the book. In 1949, Ralph Tyler, one of the foremost educators of the 20th century, published his landmark book, Basic Principles of Curriculum Instruction. The premise of his book was that he never met a child who couldn't learn. He felt there were 4 essential thoughts that should be associated with curricular design. What educational purposes should the school seek to attain? What educational experiences can we create to attain that purpose? How can these educational experiences be effectively organized? And how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained? Around 1949, a group of psychologists joined together to help design assessments that would accurately measure the objectives spelled out by Tyler. The leader of this group was Benjamin Bloom, whom we all know for Bloom's taxonomy. The group created 3 taxonomies in order to better design tests and assessments. The cognitive taxonomy has been adopted by educators who found it useful in understanding how to teach students. Jerome Bruner, another educational leader, developed constructivist theory spiral curriculum. He felt all curriculum could be learned if presented in such a way that any learner could learn it, if it was organized in an intellectually honest way, a child's way of thinking. Spiral curriculum is simply a flow from simple to complex, concrete to abstract, year to year. All disciplines have structures, and that structure can be patterned, think scope and sequence, to fit the learner. After the launch of Sputnik in 1947, the first man-made satellite of Earth, the U.S. developed a policy to close the gap in science and mathematics education that many felt resulted in our failures. In 1983, A Nation at Risk painted a picture of declining student achievement in American schools. Amid concerns that America would not be able to compete in the international economy, some perceived a narrowing of curriculum towards reading and math. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 has thought to have a similar impact on curriculum. In the late 20th century, we have seen additional influence on education theory, including Howard Gardner's Theory of Multiple Intelligences, published in 1983. In 1989, the National Council of Teachers of Math published the Curriculum and Evaluation Standards for School Math. These were groundbreaking, as this was the first set of national standards. In 1994, the Goals 2000 Educate America Act was signed into law, which set goals for standards-based education reform. Goals 2000 is considered by many to be a precursor to No Child Left Behind. Other curriculum developers became well known in the late 20th century. Grant Wiggins and Jay McTee for backward design, Heidi Hayes Jacob for curriculum mapping, Richard Dufour for professional learning communities, Carol Ann Tomlinson for differentiated instruction, and H. Lynn Erickson for concept-based curriculum instruction. These are just some of the important new curriculum developers. A revision of Bloom's taxonomy occurred around 2000. The revision was made by a committee based on new information about how students learn, and based on our knowledge of the ways in which learners process input. The original version of Bloom's taxonomy was created for use by psychologists as they created assessment, but the revised Bloom's taxonomy was created for teachers to use at all grade levels in all of their instructional planning. The new emphasis of the revised taxonomy is to be used as an authentic tool for planning curriculum, instruction, and for assessment, and for the alignment of these three. Notice the change in the terms for the categories from nouns to verbs. This change to active verbs demonstrates the cognitive processing aligned with each category. Along with cognitive process dimensions indicating the traditional pyramid for Bloom's taxonomy, the revised Bloom's taxonomy also incorporates the knowledge domain, with 4 dimensions differentiated by the kind of knowledge to be learned. These 4 dimensions are factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. Factual is declarative knowledge, or the basic elements a student must know to be acquainted with a discipline. Conceptual knowledge incorporates the interrelationships among the basic elements of a discipline. Procedural knowledge is how to do something, which could include methods of inquiry or criteria for using skills. And metacognitive knowledge depends on a learner's understanding of when and how they think, and also incorporates strategies a learner may use to increase learning. The revised Bloom's taxonomy is best understood as a chart that indicates how the knowledge dimensions on the left-hand side of the chart and the cognitive dimensions across the top interact. The two-dimensional nature of the revised Bloom's taxonomy can be useful when designing curriculum and instruction, as it is helpful to consider the kind of knowledge the learner is aiming to develop, as well as what cognitive processes they should be using. The Partnership for 21st Century Skills was created to serve as a catalyst to position 21st century readiness at the center of K-12 education. This group wanted to create models of education to prepare students for demands of citizenship, college, and careers in the millennium. Core subjects such as English, reading, language arts, world languages, arts, mathematics, economics, science, geography, history, government, and civics are at the center of the curriculum. Themes that are present throughout include global awareness, environmental literacy, financial and economic literacy, health literacy, and civic literacy. There are 3 types of skills incorporated in the discussion of 21st century skills: thinking skills, media and information skills, and life and career skills. You will examine 21st century activities and their influence on curriculum instruction in greater detail in a separate activity. The newest development in curriculum and standards is the initiative of the Common Core Standards in Math and English Language Arts. The Common Core Standards were created by the Council of Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices. Work on the Common Core Standards began in 2009 and they were released in 2010. 45 states and the District of Columbia have adopted the Common Core Standards in both Math and English Language Arts. The Next Generation Science Standards were released in 2013 and are currently in adoption and implementation phases. Fewer states have adopted the science standards than Math and English Language Arts due to other economic, political, and cultural issues. I hope that this PowerPoint has given you an overview of the evolution of curriculum. Can you see how the history of curriculum has contributed to instruction in your discipline and in your classroom?